Bava Batra Daf Kuf Kaf Chet Amud Aleph. Recognition Tviyat, which is partially a continuation from yesterday's shir, in understanding that intuition is a source of information. In the Western world, we don't give a lot of credence to intuition because it doesn't stand up in court. You can't go to court and say, well, I had this intuitive thing that was the right thing to do. It's not going to work. So we've become very dismissive of the value of intuition as a source of information. Intuition is based partially on data, but not completely. It goes beyond data. And in halacha, we see that it's given such credibility that even in Beis Din, there are times even in court where it's okay. And we saw yesterday the idea when the father says, this is my son, or this is a bechor, we don't even question the father as to how do you know. We don't do a DNA test. We accept that there's an intuitive understanding that when the connection between a father and a son is so intimate that he knows if it's his son or not. And we accept that knowledge. That becomes the halacha. Irrespective of what the data tells us, that is a data point, and that's a very powerful data point. And that's the important thing, that in certain areas, intuition is a powerful data point in halakha, and today we'll see that going even further. The shir is dedicated by my wife this morning with a bit of an embarrassing thing that she said I have to read out because it's in honor of my 75th birthday today. And she says, thank you. For many years, continuing your learning, your deep insights, teaching, mentoring, guidance, and straightening of our awareness, your constant growth and self-reflection. Thousands of people from so many different walks of life benefit. Each client you have guided, each heart you have touched has gained from the wisdom you have synthesized over these 75 years, and all remain your Talmudim. You are the hidden treasure. You are the Matmonim. Thank you, Amber. So we start with a verse in the Chumash, a piece of Gemara in Erchin, which forms the background for our Gemara. The posuk in Vayikra is the din, the law that if you know evidence, you've got to come to court. You can't have information about a case which is being heard, and you decide to stay at home. I'm not getting involved. You're not allowed to do that. If a person has sinned and has heard the situation, and he is a witness, or he saw it, or he knows something, im lo yagid, if he doesn't come to Beis Din and give his evidence, if he's subpoenaed to Beis Din, then he will bear his sin. That's a terrible aver, or that's a serious transgression of the Torah. The important words there for our purposes are or ra'ah and lo yagid, those two verbs, seeing and telling. Seeing is seeing the situation that happened, the event, and telling is being in Beit Din, giving the evidence. The Gemara says in Erchin, what happens if Haya yodea lo be'edut ad shelo na'aseh chatano v'na'aseh chatano? For example, a person sees an event. He then becomes the son-in-law of one of the litigants. He marries one of the litigants' daughters. So now he's pasul le'edut. He's no longer, he can't be an aid. But when he saw the event, he was a kosher aid. But he isn't a kosher witness now. Pikeach v'nit charesh, he could hear and now he can't hear, he's deaf. He could see and now he's blind, and so on. Hareze pasul. If, however, in between he became pasul, so he saw an event, he then married the daughter of the litigant, he then divorced her or she died, and now he comes to Beis Din, that's okay. So even though there was an interruption of paslut, of disqualification in the middle, if he was okay to start and he was okay to finish, that's okay. This is the principle that if a witness was kosher when he saw the event and he was kosher when he reported the event in court, that's okay. That is kosher. And it's based on the posuk, Da'amar Kraim, or Ra'ah, im lo yagid, b'riya v'agada talya rachmana milta. Now we come to our Gemara. Shalach le Rabbi Abba le Rav Yosef bar Chama. Rabbi Abba sent a Dvar Torah, a piece of Torah thought to Rabbi Yosef bar Chama. Haya yodea lo be'edut karka ad shelo nistameh. He knew evidence about a case that was being heard in Beis Din regarding the boundary line of a particular piece of property. And then he became blind. So he was a quantity surveyor. He knew this property. He'd measured this property. He knew the dimensions of the property. But now he's blind. And he's the person they want to give evidence in Beis Din. Says Rabbi Abba, pasul. He can't give evidence in Beis Din. He's got the data. He's got the knowledge. He can't give evidence in Beis Din. Knowledge and data is not enough. Why? Says the Ritva, Mishum debeyin tchilato v'sofo b'kashut. says the Ritva, because there's a technical problem. He can't, at the time he's giving the evidence, he's not somebody who's fit to be a witness. He can't see. When one gives the evidence, one has to be as vital in one's senses as one was at the time that one saw it, because you've got to relive. Giving edus is not just reporting information and data that you know, it's reliving the event. And if you don't have your full faculties about you, you can't fully relive the event, and the Torah says that's not allowed. Rabbeinu Gershom learns it a little differently. Rabbeinu Gershom says, "V'nistamei pasul mishum da'achshav einu yodea laharot eduto be'eze makom magia tchum karka shelo." Rabbeinu Gershom says that's not the issue here. We're not talking about this principle from the Gemara in Erchin that you must be a kosher witness when you saw, and you must be a kosher witness when you give it. No, there's another issue here, says Rabbeinu Gershom. You don't have capability because you don't have your vision. Therefore, achshav en yodeh harot eduto. You can't take us to the place, to the field, and show us exactly where it starts, where it ends. You can't fulfill your role as an aid. So he holds that this whole discussion in this piece of Gemara with various different Amorim saying various different things, including Rabbi Abba, is about the capability of the witness, not really the qualification of the witness within himself. The Gemara then goes on. Shmuel says, disagreeing with Rabbi Abba, Shmuel says, kosher, no, he can, we'll accept him. So Shmuel is certainly holding that this is not about his disqualification because he's a blind person. Shmuel is saying the issue here is his qualification, and this man, even though he's blind, is qualified. Efsha de mechaven mitzrana. It's information, it's data. He's a quantity surveyor. He knows exactly, he can tell us, it goes from this point to that point, and that's 155.4 meters. And we measure it out, and we have the data. He can give us data. Aval glimalo. But if he says, I know that this fur coat belongs to this man's wife, that we're not going to accept. Why not? Says the Rashbam, Da'amida lo samchinan, because yes, he can tell us, this is the size, this is the length of the sleeves, this is the length of each of the breadth of each lapel. He can give us all the data, but that's not the only fur coat with those measurements. This is a commodity. And at the end of the day, it could be any, so it doesn't help us that he can give us the measurements. We need more than measurements from him. What do we need more than measurements? The measurements aren't sufficient. What is it that we need more? It would seem that what we need more, let's go into Rav Sheshet, because Rav Sheshet says, Afilu glima, no, we'll accept him even on a piece of clothing. In his mind, he knows exactly what the length, and he can feel it, and he can touch it, and he can measure it out, and he knows. Says the Rabbeinu Gershom on that, he actually says, I'll give you the measurements, then go and measure it. We go and we measure, and he's exactly right. So we're dealing with data here. And the issue is he competent to give us the data we need to make the decision? That's how the Rishonim are learning it. The Rashbam, in saying the Amidah lo samchinan, is implying to us that having the data in the case of this item of clothing is not enough. Because clothing is a commodity, and there might be many items of that commodity that have the same dimensions. They're mass produced. So what is it that we need more than that? That's where we come into this idea of tviyut ayin. We need the person to be able to look at it and say, yes, I know that the measurements aren't going to tell us a whole lot because this is a commodity and there are many items with the same measurements, but I know this. I've seen this. I know this piece of clothing. I know who it belongs to. That's called tviyut ayin, the ability to claim with your eye, which is a halachic concept, that you can use your eye to claim something. And it's really the run that I want to focus on. Although this whole sugya is just it's magnificent and it's multi-layered, but let's just focus on the run. The Ran says on this statement of Rav Sheshet, "Afilu glima efshar de mechavein midat orko v'rachbo." Even a fur coat or a jacket or whatever, an item of clothing, he can figure out the measurements. Says the Ran, "Nireh de lav de ba'inan de amar haisuma behedya glima zu shuruven atovehi shemidat orko kach v'kach." We don't need him to give us the data. That's not what Rav Sheshet means. That this man can give us the data and we can measure. As Rabbeinu Gershon says, "V'nim tzakit v'rav," measure it out and see if he's right. No, says the Ran, that's not what it means. So he's attacking the Rabbeinu Gershon. Look what the boldness of the Ran, who's one of the later Rishonim. And Rabbeinu Gershon is right at the beginning of the time of the Rishonim. Rabbeinu Gershon, the Ma'or, Rabbeinu Or HaGoylo, as we call him, the light of the of Europe, of all the Torah of Europe. He started it all off. Rashi comes from him, and everywhere. Tosfos comes from everything we've got in European Torah. It comes from Rabbeinu Gershon, and the Ran's willing to say, not as you say, Rabbeinu Gershon. That doesn't make sense to me. What does Rav Sheshet mean when he says efshar de mechavein? He could get the numbers right. He could get the data right. What do you mean? Perhaps he can get the numbers right. We're going to check him and measure according to you, Rabbeinu Gershon. So the word efshar de mechavein disqualifies Rabbeinu Gershon's interpretation according to the Ran. This, the wording of the Gemara, makes it impossible for the Ran to accept the Rabbeinu Gershon's interpretation. So what does it mean? I know this is Reuven's. I know this is his. You're a blind person. How do you know? I can feel it, I can touch it, I can smell it. This is Reuven's. That's good enough. What would you say? He could be lying. That's what we would be worrying about. Maybe he's lying. He's blind. How can he know it's Reuven's? He doesn't have the data in front of him. How can he say, I know it's Reuven's? Isn't that a reason to disqualify his evidence, as it would in a Western court? He can feel it, he can measure it out with his hands. He can know what the measurements are and say, this is the cloak. So he does have data input. It's not if it's just intuition. He's not just saying, I feel this is probably, or this must be Reuven. No, he measures, he's got data. But he can't see. He doesn't have the complete data. And here's the important part. And since it's possible that he has the data, and he's claiming, I know for sure it's Reuven's, let lan lemifsele, you can't disqualify him. We don't even say to him, how do you know? We don't even ask him, okay, so give us the measurements. We don't try and catch him out. It's exactly as we had yesterday with Yaakov. We don't try and catch the father out. We accept the fact that he says, I know. Because he does have some data, and in addition to data, he has this intuitive information. It's possible that he's right. So check it out. Why don't you check the data? No, you don't need to check the data, because we've got something stronger than data. We've got data plus intuitive knowledge. We've got data plus the intimacy a person can have with an object with which he's familiar. And that's far greater, and that's called Tviyat Ayin. There's a very classical Marshal in the Yam Shel Shlomo in Chulin, where the Marshal works through the Gemara there, where Rava says, Mereisha Amina Simana Adif Mitviyat Aina. Originally, I thought that giving data to prove ownership is stronger than intuitive recognition, Tviyat Ayin. And he gives a reason. But now that I've learned this Gemara, says Rava, Amina Tviyat Eina Adifa, I believe intuitive recognition is stronger than empirical data. Because if you won't say this, how is a blind man allowed to be intimate with his wife? How does he know it's her? He can't see. He doesn't have intuition. He doesn't have data. He can hear, he can feel, he can smell. But that's not data. And no matter how dark it is, one's allowed to be with one's wife. The voice is enough. There are ways that you know that this is your wife, no matter how dark it is. You don't have to see her. And then he brings the Rashbo, and he brings the Ramban, and he brings the Rabbeinu Chananel, who disagrees a bit. He answers up the Rabbeinu Chananel, and he concludes the Amrina de Tviyat Ayin Adif Misimana. At the end of the day, the Tviyut Ayin, and again, Tviyut Ayin doesn't go against the data. Tviyut Ayin simply, and this whole discussion, what happens if a person says, I know this is this is mine. Let's say there's an aveda, there's lost property, and somebody else says, no, it's mine, and here are the simanim. I've got simanim, I've got signs that it works. Which is more important, the data or the sim? And that's what this whole sugya is in the Yam Shlomo is talking about. And we have a Rabbeinu Yonah on our Gemara that goes into that issue as well. The comparative strength of empirical data of simanim, being able to give data points that proves that this is mine or this is Ruven's, and this idea of tviyut ayin. I know that it's mine. And the validity we give to knowing, and the conclusion of the Marshal is Ta'amrina de tviyut ayin adif misimana. Even if it's what he calls mild tviyut ayin, and we say to you, are you 100% certain it's yours? You say, look, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure. That's enough. Even that is enough for tviyut ayin. And to understand that, the value, and just something for us to tune into, that although in a Western sense we're so data-based, and that's fine, we always need to check our intuition against data points. And if our intuition and the data doesn't line up, we need to go a little bit deeper. If intuitively you think a particular investment's a good investment, but the data is not supporting it, you need to think a bit more carefully. But don't completely disregard intuition. Intuition is one of the ways the Ribbono Shel Olam communicates with us. If it comes from a good place, if it's not from ego, if it's not from defensiveness, if the intuition comes from a good and an honest place, it's one of the ways the Ribbono Shel Olam communicates with us. And yes, it has to be checked up against data, it has to be aligned with data, but don't ignore intuition. It's such a strong data point. And to be able to look at something and say, I have intimate knowledge of this, whether it's through expertise, or it's through experience, or it's through familiarity. This pair of glasses, I can see it's mine. How do you know it's yours? If you ask me to prove, can I prove that this is mine and the one next door is not mine? No, but I'm so familiar with it. I hold this in my hand and I know it's mine. I hold that one in my hand and I know it's not mine. We just need to tune into that capacity that a human being has, not ignore it, because it's such a powerfully important point of information. And we see that in the beginning of the Chumash, where the Chumash says in Parshas Bereshit, "V'ha'adam yada et Chava ishto." What does that mean? And Adam knew Chava, his wife. What does it mean he knew her? It means he was intimate with her. So why use the word yediyah? Because intimate creates data points. Intimacy creates knowledge. And that the fact that he then could be, as the Marshal brings from the Gemara and Chulin, the fact that Adam can be with Chava even if he can't see her, even if he doesn't, yes, because Yada, he knows her. When you know something, that's what Yediyah is. When you know something, nobody has to say to you, how do you know? How do you know is a chutzpah question. What do you mean, how do you know? The person says, I just know. So, well, if you can't give me data, I can't go by that. No, well, you see, a Beis Din is willing to go by that under certain circumstances. There is some credence to a person just saying, I know. Trust me, I know. Just listen to that very, very carefully. A pediatrician, once we took our daughter to a pediatrician when she was very small, and this particular pediatrician examined her. And I said to him, I'm really worried. You're examining her so thoroughly. It just doesn't seem to be a big thing. And my wife couldn't even tell you what she thought was really wrong. She just said, doesn't seem right. And he said, if a mother says something doesn't seem right, that's a data point that to me is more important than anything else, and I will dig and dig and dig until I find why the mother thinks that it doesn't feel right. Is there something going on with the mother, or is there something going on with the child? But I'll dig until, because if a mother says something doesn't feel right, that's a data point. We mustn't ignore it in ourselves, we mustn't ignore it in other people. When somebody feels certain, an inner certainty about something, just check it out. Just give it some validity. I don't say one has to put one's life into the hands of someone who has an intuitive feeling or in one's own situation, but give it credence. The power of tviyut ayin, the power of the ability just to say, I know, V'adam yada et Chava ishto, this is something I know because I'm intimate with it, is something that is a powerful point of information and input.